All right, so here's the OBlock. The OBlock is 6 guys. And it's not comprised of 6 guys, but there are 6 guys that were indicted. And this is a trial that's in federal court. And I have firsthand experience of what it's like to try a case with multi-defendants in a kind of a RICO type case. Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations Act, okay? And basically, it's a way for the prosecution actually to take a bunch of activity for street gangs, it was created for the mob back in the 30s or 20s or whenever, but to get all their activity together and say it's a corrupt organization, and anything you do in furtherance of this corrupt organization is a violation of RICO. And in this particular case, there's, I think, 6 or 7 counts. So FBG Duck was gunned down in August of 2020. That just shows you how long it takes to get to trial in some of these kinds of cases. He was shopping in the Gold Coast part of Chicago, and when he was shopping, he was gunned down, and we'll show you part of this video. It took the cops forever to get him help. They were there and just standing around while he's just bleeding out. Cops have medical training. And it's not much. It's their EMTs, emergency medical technicians. I used to be an EMT, but they know how to try to put a dressing on a wound, But they didn't. They let him sit there and bleed out in the street. FBG Duck is part of the Flyboy gang. That's FBG. That's what that stands for, and they're part of the Gangster Disciples. So they're in one part of Chicago, and right adjacent to them are the OBlock. In the 63rd and St. Lawrence is about the area where the FPG and the Gangster Disciples are, and the BDs, and the OBlock are right off of Martin Luther King Drive. And now, when you look at a case like this, you sit there and you don't even want to be next to these guys when you're trying the case. You'd rather have it, just try the case by yourself. But that doesn't happen in federal court. You know what else we don't get in federal court? Cameras in the courtroom. So there's not going to be any video of this stuff. The reporters will be there, and we'll have to hear what the reporters say happened. Another thing we don't get in federal court is the benefit of any kind of fucking rulings from the defense, honestly. Just about everything the prosecution does is, that's part of in furtherance of the conspiracy. And what I mean by that is you will have statements coming in that you think would normally be hearsay, but those statements will not be hearsay in federal court, because if it's a statement in furtherance of the conspiracy, it fucking comes in, whether or not your client said it or somebody else said it. And that sucks for you, because all these statements come in and they're kind of uncross-examinable. So one of the things they did in this case is that the cops issued warrants for all this social media. And remember what I said about self-snitching? This is kind of almost where it started, really. Not necessarily with this case, but with this type of conduct. People put this shit on, because if it's not online, it didn't happen, right? And so what they do is they put this stuff online, and because and then they have songs that they sing about, smoking their dead ops, and they talk about specific people on specific times and specific places.
In front of your bitch, she could've saved you, she had a temple. I go hit for hit with your biggest rapper, he only got one. You tryna slide, just slide, that shit don't work. Fuck you.
And then there's also videos of people threatening other people or relishing in the death of certain people. It ultimately is going to be used in court. That shit's going to be going down here in federal court like you wouldn't believe. Here's the other thing. How long has it been taking for the YSL trial to get going? Fucking months? I mean, they're still selecting a jury. How is that possible? Think that's going to happen in federal court? No. And then here's why. When you're in federal court, you don't get the ability to cross-examine or examine jurors like you do in state court. The judge does almost all of it. I tried a sex trafficking case years ago, and we had 5 defendants, so each one of us only got 5 minutes of voir dire. That's what they call questioning the jury, to see if they can be fair. 5 minutes. I mean, how can you be effective in only 5 minutes? And the judge does 90% of the questioning. And so I'm sure that's the way it's going to go down here. And in federal court, It isn't like state court. State court, you have the ability to argue this or argue that. Your defenses are mapped out ahead of time, and the judge tells you what you can and cannot argue. When we look at the charges here, so the crux of count one, acts involving murder in violation of laws of the state of Illinois, and offenses involving narcotics trafficking in violation of 21 U.S. Code 841 and 846. And so the people that are charged in this are all six of them. Charles Liggins, a.k.a. C. Murda, Kenneth Robertson, a.k.a. Kenny, and Kenny Mack, to Carlos Offord, a.k.a. Los, Christopher Thomas, a.k.a. Seathang, Marcus Smart, a.k.a. Muap, and Ralph Turnpin, a.k.a. Tall and Teasy. So when you look at what the guidelines are for murder in a RICO investigation, I don't know that they're seeking the death penalty, but it's going to be an option. Certainly, it's life without parole for all this stuff. And then I don't know what the criminal history of these guys are, but that would certainly play a part in any kind of guideline calculation too. But we don't need to sit here and go through the guideline calculation because they're all looking at life. So the other thing that the court will look at is the nature.
I was making pennies for my job as a social worker, but I loved helping people.
And circumstances of this offense. This offense was cold-blooded. It was a hit. It was a cold-blooded hit. And these all are young guys. These are all stupid young guys. Stupid in the sense that they didn't have the sense, it's all about the money. Ain't a damn thing funny. It's all about the gang shit. And there's just too many of these guys dying. But, so we got Duck's dead, there were a couple other injured, and you've got 6 guys. All lives have been lost. And they're going to get convicted. The federal government has a 96% conviction rate. And they've got a lot of the stuff on video, and they have a lot of stuff that's on social media. Count 2 is just brandishing a firearm, basically. Count 3 is more RICO activity, and it's a conspiracy to murder Carlton Weekly, a.k.a. FBG Duck. And in that, all 6 of them have been indicted. Count 4 is assault with a dangerous weapon. Count 5 is another assault with a dangerous weapon. And these are all fall into the RICO category because it's in for the benefit of the organization. Another assault with a dangerous weapon. Count 7 is another assault with a dangerous weapon. So you've got 7 counts, and they're all kind of the same in the sense that they don't all name the same people, but most of them do. You've got a situation where you've got probably top prosecutors, and I would hope top criminal defense lawyers, but a lot of this is going to be uncontested evidence. The social media stuff, it all comes in. And it comes in, and there's another problem sometimes with statements of a co-defendant coming in your case, right? So if somebody makes a statement saying, so-and-so did that, well, that statement doesn't necessarily come into your case. There's a case called U.S. versus Bruton. And a Bruton problem is where you have a co-defendant's statement that wouldn't be admissible in your trial, but somehow in this case, they're coming in because it's going to become, a lot of these statements are coming as statements in furtherance of a conspiracy. So any statements that they make in furtherance of the conspiracy, whether it's on social media or whether they send it to somebody else, not a statement to law enforcement because that wouldn't be coming in, but it comes in against the individual defendant, you're done. I mean, you've got, a lot of statements that will be coming into this case against everybody, and I don't know how many snitches they've got. We aren't really privy to their witness list, but I would suspect there's going to be flies dropping because they definitely will have snitches. The government's cases always have snitches. And here's the other thing. When all these guys have been sitting in jail for now 3 years, a little over 3 years, and sitting in jail, no bail, and because they're detained under the federal laws. When you're detained like that, one of the things I don't do is I don't give my clients their discovery, in generally speaking. I go through it with them, I read it all to them, and then but I don't let them keep it in their cell. You know why? Because I go to lunch, and I leave my papers back in my cell, and guess what happens? Some guy will go read my papers, and then, he's looking at some other drug charge or whatever. He'll call he'll call his lawyer, and the lawyer will call the prosecutor and say, look, he just admitted to all this stuff. Well, how does he know that? He knows it because he just read all of his paperwork. One of the things I've done in the past, actually, which is really fucking funny, is I've given my client somebody else's paperwork. So when they try to snitch on your client, they're giving him completely wrong information. That's pretty funny because then, but that's why you don't give your client their paperwork in custody. In some jurisdictions, you can give a thumb drive, and they keep the thumb drive up at the the booking desk or the main desk control center, and that way then nobody has access to it unless you're actually looking at the computer. So we will follow this OBlock trial because it's going to be interesting, and they're not just doing this here, doing it at YSL down in Atlanta, Georgia. They're doing it in Chicago. They're doing it in Detroit. They're doing it in New York. They're doing it all over the country. And K-Flock trial, his trial's coming up soon. A lot of these guys won't snitch, but some of them will. And enough of them will to fuck you up. Pardon my French. So this is just our little breakdown of the OBlock trial. So I want you guys to just follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and stay out of harm's way and build. So from the content genius Michael Rivers and myself, board-certified criminal defense lawyer Bruce Rivers, we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.